Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're really getting into the personal life of Charles Darwin. We all know the name, the theory of evolution, the big scientific figure.
Right.
But we want to look deeper at Darwin the man, the, a husband, the father, this chronically ill person whose home life, maybe surprisingly, was kind of the engine room for his huge ideas.
That's exactly it. We're using sources, especially insights from Randal Keynes' work, to get past that sort of textbook giant image.
Yeah.
We're looking at the source material itself to understand this really intense private conflict he lived with, the clash between his scientific findings and, well, the very strong faith of his wife, Emma.
So for you listening, we're exploring how it all connects his early travels, that pretty unconventional home setup, the happiness, the terrible grief with his kids, how all that got tangled up with natural selection and his ideas about where our morals come from, all brewing quietly there at Down House. Okay, so let's start at the beginning of their married life. London. Charles and Emma move into this house, and it sounds like Charles wasn't exactly thrilled with the decor.
Not quite, no. He apparently called it Macaw Cottage because it was just so ugly.
Macaw Cottage.
Yeah, he'd just come back from seeing all this incredible tropical beauty, right? And then he lands in this London house where the drawing room furniture supposedly had all the macaw's colors, but in hideous discord, as he put it.
Huh. Okay. So not ideal.
It really speaks to that early chaos. And Charles, well, he immediately turned an attic into his museum. Filled it with all his beagle specimens, souvenirs, everything. It was a busy, noisy house, apparently. Totally the opposite of the quiet he needed to think. Emma, who was this accomplished pianist, even said the sound of a cab rattling by at night felt like it lasted forever.
And the family grew fast. Willie, their first son, arrived, and Charles was, well, completely smitten.
Oh, absolutely. Descriptions say he had this real rush of paternal fervor, called the baby a prodigy of beauty and intellect, just totally captivated.
A charming little fellow.
But, that joy was happening alongside a pretty tough reality for Emma. Her life became this near constant cycle of pregnancy.
9 children in 12 years.
Exactly. A treadmill of pregnancy is how it's been described. And she was sharp, intellectually curious. She took piano lessons from Ignaz Moscheles, who, funnily enough, couldn't stand Chopin's style, thought it was too flashy.
Really?
Yeah. But her own pursuits often got swamped by just running the household. After her 5th kid, she was already writing about hoping she wouldn't have another one too soon.
Wow. And all this family life unfolded under the, well, pretty terrifying shadow of 19th century medicine.
Oh, absolutely terrifying. They relied a lot on Charles's father, Dr. Robert Darwin, for advice, for prescriptions.
And these weren't exactly gentle remedies, were they?
No. Can you imagine giving your child 3 drops of antimonial wine? Which was basically tartar emetic, an antimony compound mixed with sherry.
Antimony.
Or a grain of calomel, that's mercurous chloride? Mercury.
Mercury for kids. It sounds insane now.
It was standard practice. But we know now these things were, at best, useless and often actively harmful. Poisonous, really.
So Charles is watching his children get dosed with poisons, basically. And he himself is suffering from this mysterious illness that nobody could figure out.
Exactly. The doctors, the establishment, they had nothing for him, just more of the same ineffective, often toxic treatments. Arsenic, lead, mercury, these were common things in medicines back then.
So how does that personal experience, that failure human cures, connect to his scientific thinking? Does it feed into his view of nature?
I think it has to. Think about it. The medical world is offering randomness, danger, actual harm. It reinforces this idea that health isn't guaranteed by some benevolent design.
Right.
Survival is about robustness, maybe luck. And when he later turns to Dr. Gully's water cure hydrotherapy in Malvern, the big appeal wasn't necessarily the water.
No.
It was that Gully rejected all drugs, all those poisons. Darwin was looking for an escape from that toxic, almost superstitious system. It mirrored the kind of unguided, sometimes brutal natural world he was starting to piece together.
Okay, let's shift focus a bit to the Beagle voyage, because that was clearly foundational. He talked about this chaos of delight, seeing tropical plants for the first time.
Yeah, Brazil. He said seeing the jungles there was like giving to a blind man eyes. Just pure wonder.
But it wasn't all just natural beauty, was it? He encountered human cruelty, too.
Definitely. Slavery in Brazil hit him hard. His journals show real horror. He pushed back against the idea it was just a tolerable evil. He wrote about the constant fear slaves must have lived with, that their families could be torn from you and sold like beasts at any moment. That sense of moral outrage, it's powerful.
And that contrast, nature's glory versus human cruelty, gets even sharper with the Fuegians, right? In Tierra del Fuego.
Yeah.
They were seen as the absolute bottom rung of humanity back then.
Lowest barbarians was the term used. But Darwin lived with some of them on the ship. Jemmy Button, Foydia Basket, they'd even been to England. And Darwin writes he was incessantly struck by how similar their minds were to ours. Not different in kind, just circumstance. That blurred the lines massively. It was revolutionary thinking for the time.
Undermining that idea of humans being completely separate, divinely unique.
Exactly. And there was Jenny.
Jenny the orangutan at the London Zoo.
Yep. Even Queen Victoria went to see her. And her reaction, she found Jenny frightful and painfully and disagreeably human.
Painfully human. That says it all, doesn't it?
It really does. It captures that discomfort, that realization Darwin was having. The line between animal instinct and human reason wasn't the solid wall people assumed it was. It was more like a gradient.
And that leads him to start sketching things out.
Directly. His first notebook on transmutation, the famous Tree of Life sketch, appears there, showing species branching off, connected, all flowing from these observations.
Okay, so here's where it gets really radical, connecting animals and humans. The moral sense.
Yeah.
Conscience. How did he explain that?
He believed it wasn't some divine gift. He saw conscience as an hereditary compound passion. Basically, it evolved naturally from social instincts, from affection, the need to live in groups.
Like pack behavior, but more complex.
In a way, yes. He even said a dog's conscience differed from a human's only in degree, not of kind.
Wow.
Morality, for Darwin, was essentially an evolved survival strategy for social animals, which, takes the soul right out of the equation and makes it biological. A massive challenge to the religious views of the time. And that was the huge problem. His ideas, especially about morality coming from biology, just flew in the face of everything. Natural theology was dominant, the idea that nature proved God's goodness, God's design.
Right. The world is evidence of God.
Exactly. Even his scientific mentors, people like Herschel, they advocated for scientific inquiry, sure, but separate from challenging scripture directly. Darwin was hitting at the very core the idea of revelation, of mankind's special place.
And this wasn't just an abstract problem for him. It was playing out right there in his marriage. Emma was deeply religious.
Deeply. And deeply worried, she wrote him this incredibly moving note, we have it, expressing her fear about him potentially giving up revelation.
What does she mean by that? Like abandoning faith?
Essentially, yes. And the potential consequences. She worried about him casting off what has been done for your benefit, meaning salvation, eternal life. Her Unitarian faith already focused on rational morality, but the big fear, it seems, was losing that hope of reunion after death. If humans were just matter, just biology, as his theory implied.
Then there's no soul, no afterlife.
Exactly, no reunion with loved ones. For Emma, his discoveries, as she called them, threatened that ultimate comfort. It must have been devastating for her to contemplate.
And the weight of that disagreement, it stayed with him, didn't it, that note?
He kept it his whole life, and years later he wrote on it, "When I am dead, know that many times I have kissed and cried over this. CD."
Oh, man.
It's just staggering. The tenderness there from the man whose theory described this relentless struggle for existence, it shows this profound gap, this pain that even their deep love couldn't quite bridge. Yeah.
And it's right in the middle of this intense personal and intellectual struggle that he suddenly pivots to barnacles.
Right, the barnacles. 8 years, it seems completely out of left field. Was he just hiding? Taking a break?
It looks like it, but it was probably more calculated than that. Think about the timing. 1846. He's already sketched out his main theory in private essays.
Okay.
And then suddenly he dives headfirst into this exhaustive, microscopic study of barnacle cirripedia. Lasts until 1854, 8 solid years.
And his kids just thought this was normal dad behavior.
Apparently so. Family accounts say they just accepted it as the natural occupation of the head of family. His son, George, apparently used to ask other kids, "Where does your father do his barnacles?"
That's amazing. They thought everyone's dad studied barnacles.
It sounds funny, but it served a purpose beyond just distraction. It was strategic. This incredibly detailed, meticulous work on a really obscure group of animals, it built his reputation.
Establishing his credentials. Exactly. With the scientific bigwigs, the establishment figures like Owen and Hooker, by becoming the world's expert on barnacles, of all things, he was proving his scientific rigor, his patience, his expertise. He was kind of arming himself, building up credibility before he dropped the bombshell theory he knew would cause uproar.
But then comes perhaps the hardest blow in his personal life.
Yeah.
The loss of his daughter Annie in 1851.
Yes. Annie was his eldest daughter, and by all accounts, a real favorite. She got sick. They took her to Malvern for that same water cure Darwin himself used, but she died there. She was only 10.
It's devastating.
Completely. And Charles's reaction, his grief, was poured into this memorial he wrote for her. It wasn't for publication, just for himself and Emma.
What did he write?
It's incredibly personal. Written on black-bordered morning paper, he dwells on her character, her buoyant joyousness, her cordiality, how sensitive she was, her sensitiveness to the least blame.
Oh, wow.
And his one comfort, he wrote, was that looking back, he felt he'd hardly ever cast a look of displeasure on her. Just pure, heartbroken love.
It's so raw. But how does that intense personal grief, how does it connect back to his scientific worldview? Does it soften his view of nature's ruthlessness or what?
Strangely, it seems to have reinforced it. For Darwin, the death of an innocent, beloved child like Annie became the ultimate proof against a benevolent, interventionist God. How could a good God allow such suffering?
Right.
But he realized such random, tragic events were perfectly compatible with the belief in natural selection. Because natural selection isn't perfect, it isn't kind, it isn't guided by morality. It just happens.
Nature eliminates the weak, regardless of how loved they are.
Exactly. The good will be preserved and the bad rigidly destroyed. That was the cold logic he saw playing out.
Annie's death, many argue, was the final nail in the coffin for any lingering traditional faith he might have had.
And his anxieties about inherited traits, about whatness, they weren't just abstract scientific concerns either, were they? He and Emma were first cousins. That's right. And he became increasingly worried about potential ill health or degeneracy in their children because of it. This wasn't just theory. He saw illness and early death in his own family.
So he wanted to study it.
Yes, he actively pushed for questions about cousin marriages and child mortality to be included in the national census in 1871. He argued that understanding these biological patterns was crucial to reducing human suffering.
Makes sense. Did it happen?
No, it got blocked. Opposed by, as he put it, ignorant members of our legislature who saw it as an invasion of privacy.
So you see this tension again. The scientist trying to understand natural law, even in his own family, potentially to mitigate its effects.
While his published theory describes that very law's inescapable power, it's that contrast again. The grieving father who writes this incredibly tender memorial for Annie and the scientist who sees nature impersonally, selecting, eliminating, perceiving.
Right.
Even later, when Alfred Russel Wallace's letter basically forced him to finally publish Origin of Species, it happened right as another tragedy struck. His youngest son, Charles Waring, died of scarlet fever.
Oh, no.
Darwin's immediate reaction, thank God he will never suffer more in this world. The brutal reality of that struggle for existence, it was just always there, right in his own home. Hashtag Chag outro. So when you pull all these pieces together, the dodgy medicine, seeing the shared humanity in the Phrygians, the deep conflict with Emma's faith, the agony of losing Annie, you realize his science wasn't created in some detached intellectual bubble.
No, not at all.
His genius, his theories, they were absolutely tangled up with his emotions, his anxieties, his grief. His home downhouse was really the crucible where it was all forged.
And it leads to this fundamental question, doesn't it? Something Darwin himself wrestled with, thinking about the philosopher David Hume. If our minds evolved through this same messy, imperfect process of natural selection.
Right. Developed from minds as low as that possessed by the lowest animal, as he put it.
Can we actually trust the huge conclusions our minds draw about the universe, about existence itself?
That's the profound doubt at the heart of it, isn't it? Can the mind of man be trusted when it draws such grand conclusions? It's a question that still hangs over everything.
Absolutely. Really provocative thought to end on. Maybe think about how your own life they're made. The things you love, the things you fear, your own family experiences, how that inevitably shapes the way you see the world, the conclusions you draw. Thanks for joining us for the deep dive.